What if everything you believe about hard work is quietly destroying your future, not because you are lazy, not because you lack talent, but because of one invisible mistake, a mistake that most hardworking people make every single day and never even realize it? Here is a question I want you to sit with for a moment. Think about the last 6 months of your life. How many mornings did you wake up early? How many nights did you push through exhaustion? How many goals did you write down, promise yourself, and chase with everything you had? Now answer me honestly. Where are you today compared to where you were 6 months ago? If the honest answer makes you uncomfortable, if part of you is thinking, I worked so hard, but nothing really changed, then what you are about to hear is not just a story. It is an explanation, and perhaps the most important one you will ever receive. There is a silent epidemic among hardworking people, not an epidemic of laziness, not an epidemic of distraction. It is an epidemic of inconsistency, and it is far more dangerous than anything else because it hides inside the one thing you are most proud of: your effort. You see, most people think about progress the way they think about filling a bucket with water. Pour enough in, and eventually it overflows. Work hard enough, and eventually success arrives. But here is what nobody tells you. If your bucket has a crack in the bottom, even a tiny one, it does not matter how much water you pour in. It will always empty out overnight. And the crack I am talking about is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is the moment you decide, even once, even for one day, that today does not count. I missed yesterday, so today is already ruined. I will start fresh on Monday. What is the point of doing a little when I cannot do it all? That thought, that single thought, is the crack in your bucket. And today, I want to tell you about a man who discovered this the hard way. A man who worked harder than almost anyone around him, and yet, for years, watched everything he built crumble to dust. His name was Thomas. Thomas Aldrin was 34 years old, and he lived in the kind of exhaustion that sleep could not fix. He was a bricklayer in a small English town in the mid-1800s, an era when men like Thomas were paid almost nothing for work that broke their backs before they turned 40. Every morning, Thomas rose before the sun. He pulled on the same worn boots, wrapped his cracked hands in old cloth, and walked 40 minutes to whatever construction site needed him that day. He was not the strongest man on the crew, but he was, without question, the most hardworking. While other men rested during breaks, Thomas laid more bricks. While other men went home for supper, Thomas stayed until the foreman told him to leave. While other men spent their wages at the pub on Friday evening, Thomas kept a small tin box under his bed where he saved every coin he could spare. He had a dream, not a grand dream, not a rich man's dream, just a simple, quiet, aching dream to one day own the small house at the end of Elm Street, the one with the green door and the garden that looked out over the river. He had wanted it for 11 years, and for 11 years he had worked himself to the bone trying to reach it. But here is the part of the story that Thomas never talked about, not to his wife, not to his children, not even to himself. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how many hours he gave, how many coins he saved, how many mornings he dragged himself out before dawn, he never seemed to get any closer. The winter of 1867 broke Thomas in a way that 11 years of hard labor had not. In November, the construction site where he worked shut down without warning. The owner had gone bankrupt. Overnight, Thomas lost his income. For 3 weeks, there was no work to be found in town. 3 weeks of waking up with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And so, for the first time in years, Thomas stopped. He stopped saving. What is the point? There is nothing coming in. He stopped his evening walks where he used to plan and dream. I'm too tired for that now. He stopped the small habits, the morning routine, the careful notes in his ledger, the weekly review of his savings tin. It is only temporary. I will restart when things are better. 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 6. By the time work returned, Thomas found himself facing something more frightening than an empty savings tin. He found himself facing a man he did not recognize. The discipline he had spent years building, the early mornings, the careful habits, the relentless showing up, it was gone, not diminished, gone, like a fire that had burned out completely in the cold. He tried to restart, and he could not understand why it felt like beginning from nothing, as if the 11 years had never happened at all. That winter, Thomas sat by a dying fire one night and said something to his wife that she would remember for the rest of her life. "Margaret, I have worked harder than any man I know, and I have nothing more to show for it than the day I started." The following spring, a new foreman arrived at the site where Thomas worked. His name was Edmund Cole. Edmund was not a large man, and he was not particularly impressive to look at. He was in his mid-50s, quiet, precise in his movements, and he had a habit that all the younger workers found strange. Every evening, before he left the site, Edmund would lay exactly 5 bricks himself. Not 50, not a wall, not even a section. 5 bricks. Even on the days when the crew had built nothing, when rain had stopped the work entirely, when supplies had not arrived, when the plans needed changing, Edmund would walk to the site, pick up his trowel, and lay 5 bricks. The younger men laughed at him. 5 bricks? That will not build anything. What is the point of 5 bricks when you need 5,000? But Thomas did not laugh. Something about Edmund's quiet ritual stayed with him. One evening in late April, Thomas waited until the others had gone. He walked over to where Edmund was pressing his last brick into place, with the calm precision of a man who had done this 10,000 times. "May I ask you something?" Edmund did not look up. "You may." "Why 5 bricks? Every evening, even when it does not matter?" Edmund set down his trowel. He looked at Thomas with the kind of eyes that have seen things, things that cannot be untaught. "Because," he said, "0 is the only number that never recovers." Thomas waited. Any number greater than 0, no matter how small, can grow, can compound, can become something. But 0. Edmund picked up his trowel again. He paused. 0 multiplied by anything is still 0. And once you allow yourself a day of 0, the next day of 0 becomes easier. And the day after that. And soon you are not a man who had a bad week. You are a man who no longer builds. Thomas stood very still. He was not thinking about bricks. He was thinking about his savings tin, his morning walks, his ledger, his 11 years of starting over. "You have been allowing yourself zeros," Edmund said, not unkindly. "That is why nothing compounds." That evening, Thomas walked home in silence, and for the first time in 11 years, he understood something so simple, so devastatingly simple, that it nearly brought him to his knees. Progress does not require perfection. Progress does not require massive effort. Progress does not even require consistency in the way most people think about it. Progress requires only one thing: that you never allow the number to reach 0. This is what Edmund called, and what Thomas would spend the rest of his life living by, the never zero rule. And it works like this. Think of your most important goal, your most important habit, the thing you know deep down that if you did it consistently would slowly but surely change your life. Now imagine that goal as a number. Every day you work on it, the number grows. Every day you rest, the number stays the same. But every day you allow yourself complete zero. Not a small effort, not a reduced effort, but a full deliberate abandonment. The number does not simply pause. It begins to decay. And here is the part that most people never understand. The decay is not just in the progress itself. The decay is in you, in your identity as someone who does the thing, in the neural pathways your brain has built around the habit, in the trust you have with yourself. When you allow a zero, you are not just missing a day. You are telling your brain a story. This is who I am, someone who stops. And your brain, that extraordinary, powerful, terrifyingly obedient organ, believes you. The never zero rule does not say you must do everything. It does not say you must perform at your peak every single day. It says only this: do something, anything, but never nothing. Lay 5 bricks when you cannot lay 500. Write 1 sentence when you cannot write 1 chapter. Save 1 coin when you cannot save 10. Walk 5 minutes when you cannot walk an hour. Because 5 bricks laid every evening without exception will build something, whereas 500 bricks laid with enormous effort but abandoned the moment life becomes difficult will build only a habit of abandonment. Thomas did not change everything overnight. He did not suddenly become a different man. But the morning after his conversation with Edmund, he did one small, unremarkable thing. He opened his ledger, the one he had closed 6 months ago, and wrote the date. That was all. He did not make a grand plan. He did not set ambitious targets. He just wrote the date. And he made himself one quiet promise: I will not allow a zero. The next morning, he saved 2 coins instead of spending them. The morning after, he walked past the house on Elm Street, not to dream, but just to look. The morning after that, he laid his bricks at work with the particular care of a man who has remembered why the work matters. Small things, unremarkable things, things that no one around him noticed. But the number never reached zero, not once. Not even on the days when Thomas was exhausted. Not even on the days when the weather was bitter and the work felt meaningless. Not even on the days when the house on Elm Street felt further away than ever. Because Thomas had learned something that cannot be unlearned. That the number is not the point. The showing up is the point. 6 months later, Thomas's savings had grown further than in any previous year, not because he was working harder, he was working the same hours, earning the same wages, but the momentum, the quiet, invisible, relentless compounding of days that never reached zero, was building something that effort alone had never built, something that cannot be built in a day, or a week, or even a month. It can only be built by never stopping. Now, I want to ask you something. What is the house on Elm Street in your life? What is the dream, the quiet, persistent, 11-year dream that you have been working toward with enormous effort, but never quite reaching? And more importantly, how many times have you allowed a zero, not because you were lazy, not because you did not care, but because life became difficult and you told yourself that today did not count? That is the crack in the bucket. Here is what the never zero rule looks like in practice, not in a story, but in your real life, starting tomorrow. First, Identify the one habit that, if done consistently, would change your trajectory. Not 3 habits, not a complete system. 1. Second, define the absolute minimum version of that habit. The version so small it is almost embarrassing. 5 bricks, 1 sentence, 2 coins, 3 minutes. That minimum version is your never zero. Third, on the days when everything goes wrong, when you are exhausted, overwhelmed, and the last thing you want to do is show up, do not do the full version. Do the never zero version and then stop. Give yourself permission to stop, because 5 bricks laid with integrity is worth infinitely more than 500 bricks planned and never placed, because consistency compounds, perfection does not. Because the man who does a little every day for 10 years will always outbuild the man who does everything for 3 months and then disappears. The never zero rule does not require you to be extraordinary. It only requires you to refuse zero. And that one refusal made quietly every single day is how progress becomes automatic. Thomas Edmund was not a remarkable man. He was not smarter than the men around him. He was not luckier. He did not receive any extraordinary opportunity. He simply learned at 34 years old that the only progress that truly disappears is the progress you abandon. Everything else, no matter how small, survives the night. 3 years after his conversation with Edmund on a cold Tuesday morning in November, Thomas Aldrin opened the green door of the house on Elm Street. And for the first time in 14 years of working toward a dream, he was already home. If this story has stayed with you in some way, I would invite you to do one thing before this video ends. Just one thing. Think of your never zero, the smallest possible version of the habit that matters most to you. Write it down, not for the result it gives you tomorrow, but for the person it proves you are becoming every single day.